The Battle of Agincourt was a major English victory in the Hundred Years' War. The battle took place on Friday, 25 October 1415, near Agincourt, in northern France. Henry V's victory at Agincourt, against a numerically superior French army, crippled France and started a new period in the war during which Henry V married the French king's daughter, and their son, later Henry VI of England and Henry II of France, was made heir to the throne of France as well as of England. English speakers found it easier to pronounce Agincourt with a G instead of the original Z. For all historians in the non-English speaking world, the battle is referred to with the toponymy of Agincourt, whereas English-only speaking historians kept the modified speaking of Agincourt. Henry V led his troops into battle and participated in hand-to-hand fighting. The French king of the time, Charles VI, did not command the French army himself as he suffered from severe psychotic illnesses with moderate mental incapacitation. Instead, the French were commanded by Constable Charles d'Albret and various prominent French noblemen of the Armagnac party. This battle is notable for the use of the English longbow in very large numbers, with English and Welsh archers forming most of Henry's army. The battle is the centerpiece of the play Henry V by William Shakespeare. Contemporary accounts. The Battle of Agincourt is well documented by at least 7 contemporary accounts, 3 of them by eyewitnesses. The approximate location of the battle has never been in dispute and the place remains relatively unaltered even after 600 years. Immediately after the battle, Henry summoned the heralds of the two armies who had watched the battle together, and with the principal French herald, Monstrelet, settled on the name of the battle as Agincourt, after the nearest fortified place. 2 of the most frequently cited accounts come from Burgundian sources. One from Jean Lefebvre de Saint-Remy, who was present at the battle, and the other from Enguerrand de Monstrelet. The English eyewitness account comes from the anonymous jester Henris I Quinter, believed to have been written by a chaplain in the king's household, who would have been in the baggage train at the battle. A recent reappraisal of Henry's strategy of the Agincourt campaign incorporates these 3 accounts, and argues that war was seen as a legal due process for solving the disagreement over claims to the French throne. Campaign. Henry V invaded France following the failure of negotiations with the French. He claimed the title of King of France through his great-grandfather Edward III, although in practice the English kings were generally prepared to renounce this claim if the French would acknowledge the English claim on Aquitaine and other French lands. He initially called a Great Council in the spring of 1414 to discuss going to war with France, but the lords insisted that he should negotiate further and moderate his claims. In the following negotiations, Henry said that he would give up his claim to the French throne if the French would pay the 1.6 million crowns outstanding from the ransom of John II, and concede English ownership of the lands of Normandy, Touraine, Anjou, Brittany and Flanders, as well as Aquitaine. Henry would marry Princess Catherine, the young daughter of Charles VI, and receive a dowry of 2 million crowns. The French responded with what they considered the generous terms of marriage with Princess Catherine, a dowry of 600,000 crowns, and an enlarged Aquitaine. By 1415, negotiations had ground to a halt, with the English claiming that the French had mocked their claims and ridiculed Henry himself. In December 1414, the English Parliament was persuaded to grant Henry a double subsidy, a tax at twice the traditional rate, to recover his inheritance from the French. On 19 April 1415, Henry again asked the Great Council to sanction war with France, and this time they agreed. Henry's army landed in northern France on 13 August 1415. carried by a fleet described by Shakespeare as a city on the inconstant billows dancing, for so appears this fleet majestical, often reported to comprise 1,500 ships, but probably far smaller, and besieged the port of Harfleur with an army of about 12,000, and up to 20,000 horses. The siege took longer than expected. The town surrendered on the 22nd of September, and the English army did not leave until the 8th of October. The campaign season was coming to an end, and the English army had suffered many casualties through disease. Rather than retire directly to England for the winter, with his costly expedition resulting in the capture of only one town, Henry decided to march most of his army through Normandy to the port of Calais, the English stronghold in northern France, to demonstrate by his presence in the territory at the head of an army that his right to rule in the duchy was more than a mere abstract legal and historical claim. He also intended the maneuver as a deliberate provocation to battle aimed at the Dauphin, who had failed to respond to Henry's personal challenge to combat at Harfleur. The French had raised an army during the siege which assembled around Rouen. This was not strictly a feudal army, but an army paid through a system similar to the English. The French hoped to raise 9,000 troops, but the army was not ready in time to relieve Harfleur. After Henry V's march to the north, the French moved to blockade them along the river Somme. They were successful for a time, forcing Henry to move south, away from Calais, to find a ford. The English finally crossed the Somme south of Péronne, at Agincourt and Voines, and resumed marching north. Without the river protection, the French were hesitant to force a battle. They shadowed Henry's army while calling assemblées des nobles, calling on local nobles to join the army. By the 24th of October, both armies faced each other for battle, but the French declined, hoping for the arrival of more troops. The two armies spent the night of the 24th of October on open ground. The next day the French initiated negotiations as a delaying tactic, but Henry ordered his army to advance and to start a battle that, given the state of his army, he would have preferred to avoid, or to fight defensively. That was how Crec'Acut and the other famous longbow victories had been won. The English had very little food, had marched 260 miles in 2.5 weeks, were suffering from sickness such as dysentery, and faced much larger numbers of well-equipped French men-at-arms. The French army blocked Henry's way to the safety of Calais, however, and delaying battle would only further weaken his tired army and allow more French troops to arrive.